Hello, this is Mike Nemeth, Communications Director for the California Apartment Association. I'm here to welcome you to CAA's webinar, a COVID-19 Industry Roundtable Discussion. The COVID-19 pandemic has altered not only the way all of us live day to day, but also how businesses operate. As a rental property owner or manager, you're likely wondering how others in the industry have had to adjust their practices to cope with this ongoing crisis. To help you gain better insights into how other industry professionals have adapted to their circumstances, we have three guest presenters today. Christine Franz, Vice President of Property Management with Mill Creek Residential, Adam Goldfarb, Chief Operating Officer for Manco Abbott Real Estate Management, and Vanessa Syburn, Senior Vice President for Northern California with FPI Management. To help moderate the discussion, we have Joshua Howard, CAA's Executive Vice President for Local Government Affairs, and Whitney Prout, the Association's Legal and Compliance Counsel. Before we get started, I have a legal disclaimer to share. CAA strives to provide accurate and timely information to assist its members. This seminar offers general information only and is not intended as legal advice. For legal advice on your specific property, please contact an experienced attorney. Information presented in this seminar is subject to change. Stay tuned and keep informed with CAA. Now I'd like to turn over the webinar to Joshua.
Well, thank you, Mike. Well, today we have a great discussion planned with some fantastic industry professionals who manage units across the state of California, here to talk with us about different facets of rental housing operations and how operations have been affected in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we'll be talking about several general categories, including marketing and leasing in this new environment, new ways to collect rent, address maintenance issues, resident communications, and working with on-site and corporate office and maintenance staff, as well as all employees. Our panelists are experts in all of these areas, and we're very fortunate to have three seasoned professionals who operate in California with us today.
Yeah, that's right. And before we jump in, just a quick note that as all of you are likely aware, the COVID-19 pandemic and each company's responses to it are constantly changing as the situation changes. So what works one day or one week may not work the next. So just keep that in mind as we talk through the various topics today. This is really a snapshot in time in terms of how our different guest presenters have handled these issues within their own companies. But of course, that could always change.
Thanks, Whitney. And why don't we go ahead and get started with a conversation about marketing and leasing in this new environment. We all know that it's important to keep our buildings full, keep our units occupied, but that might be difficult now with social distancing and shelter-in-place orders. Christine, maybe you could start us off in talking a little bit about how your properties and your company has addressed marketing and leasing in this new environment.
Sure, thanks, Joshua. I think we've taken a holistic look at it and really look at what is the most important thing for us to do right now. And it's A, keep as many people in the building that we can. So really focus on our lease renewals. Try to pull back as many notice to vacates as we can and focus on the leads coming in. And with the leads coming in, since we are working behind closed doors, we're really working hard on virtual tours, using social media as a great platform to put things out, to invite people to virtual open houses, to really connect with our prospects as well as our residents and give the best presentation of our community and the virtual platform as we would if somebody came through the door. So we do some self-touring in some areas of the country, not here in California yet, but virtual tours have really been what we've used so far.
How about you, Adam? How are you marketing and showing your units?
A lot of the same that Christine mentioned. Generally, before we would think about touring someone, we would ask them if they've been on our website, look at the floor plans, look at all of our amenities, talk with them over the phone, have that interaction that way, offer them a video tour and a FaceTime tour those type things, and go through the actual apartment with our cell phones and try to get them interested that way. We haven't gone to the self-touring yet either. I'm not looking to that right now.
And Vanessa, I mean, FPI has units all over the country, affordable market rate. How are you addressing marketing and leasing, and maybe even touch maybe on affordable housing compliance with all these new restrictions?
Yeah, so we've taken a multifaceted approach to leasing and marketing now that our dynamic has changed. We were kind of an early adopter of closing our offices to the public, so we really needed to work fast and furious in order to come up with a virtual leasing plan. And luckily, a lot of our leasing agents are very dynamic and have the ability to leverage the technology that's available to them. So immediately we had FaceTime tours, we had sample video tours available to our residents or our prospects. And then we used other things like services through Zillow or through apartments.com that could help tour our residents virtually as well for those sites that had those options available. We also, anything that we did, we shared it globally with our company so that everybody had the same tools, and the tools available to them were equally distributed so that we were able to get the message out fast. So we created a Google Drive with a ton of resources that our teams could access. And then we also, at the same time, knew that this is going to take a little bit longer than we expected initially. So now we are looking into the different sources that are available out there that, you know, may cost a little bit of money, but will set our virtual tours aside from our competitors. So we've looked into Tour 360, Matterport, Lease Pro, and even the Apartments SEO product to create those virtual tours for our teams. So as far as the affordable, you know, that's a totally different dynamic, a lot of paperwork, a lot of physical paperwork. So we had to kind of jump through those hurdles as well on how to, you know, actually sign a lease with a prospect who's moving in, and how to do move-ins and how to do move-in inspections. So at this point, we are still limiting our person-to-person contact for sure. But there are things that we do need to do with our prospects that do require that physical touch. So we're not doing self tours at this point, but we are utilizing lockboxes in certain areas in order to perform move-in.
Got it. Well, that's great information. You know, there's one thing I wanted to circle back on, and Chris, I think you mentioned it, really trying to reduce that turnover rate, you know, maybe pulling back on intent to vacate notices. What has your company done to try and get the residents that you have in place to stay in place?
So on our lease renewals, we went back to anyone that hadn't given, you know, was undecided or notice to vacate, and we offered an incentive to stay. So a small financial incentive for them to stay. And then the renewals going forward, which would really probably encompass more April, May, and June, doing some type of financial incentive for people to stay. And we understand that some folks will be going through some hard times. So we really, you know, a lot of people's first thought is, I just have to leave, I have to go. And we're really trying to get those folks to come in and speak with us, and then we can tell them about our different options, rent deferral option, lease extension options, and things like that. There is help, and we can help people. I'm sure we won't be able to help 100% of the folks, but we're doing everything we can to give them an incentive to stay and then help them work through their problems if we can.
Great. And you know, Vanessa, has your experience been similar at your properties?
Absolutely. So that was one of the recommendations we made to our ownership groups, because we are third-party fee managed. We can't say, yeah, everybody needs to stay, no more notices. But for the most part, all of our clients, or most of our clients, have been very receptive to lease extensions to freezing rents and renewing at their current rental rate, or also, rescinding notices. If somebody gave notice to move, we're having that conversation with the resident, like now is not an ideal time to move. You're going to have some added challenges to that process. So let's just sit tight. Maybe let's renew your lease for a couple months and then reevaluate.
Yeah, makes sense. And Adam, did you want to chime in on that?
No, it seems like Vanessa and Christine have it down on what generally every company is trying to do out there. You want to minimize all your notices more than normal. You want to be compassionate with the renter. You want to explain all the situations that are at hand, because leaving, like they said, might not be the best option. Hopefully it's not. Just educating them and giving them the different government websites to get unemployment if they have to do that and whatnot. Just walking them through that whole scenario of how they can get by for the next couple months.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think that actually takes us right into our next topic here.
Yeah, it does. I mean, one of the things that is changing quite substantially, and Vanessa, you touched on it for a minute, is how are we changing rent collection, rent payment? And I think that's an interesting piece for those communities where rent is still accepted in person.
Yeah.
Adam, maybe you could share with us a little bit about what Mancoabit has done to reduce person-to-person contact while still collecting rents, and other things you might be doing to encourage timely payment of rent.
Yeah. Well, we've sent out a handful of different communications over the past couple of weeks, stressing the importance of online payments if their community is set up for that. If they're not set up for that, we had to relocate some of our rent drop boxes to make them more user-friendly and separate from the rest of the community. In addition, a lot of companies out there have started what they call WIPs, or walk-in payment services, where a resident can go into a number of different open stores out there, Walmart being one of them, where they can pay their rent and it uploads to their property management software.
Interesting. How about you, Vanessa?
Yeah, so when all of this kind of arose a couple weeks ago, this was a hot topic for everyone. How are we going to collect rent if our offices are closed? So we really had to think outside the box and enhance some of the things that we were doing. So we put together a document to go to our ownership to request that they would absorb the ACH and credit card fees that are associated with paying online, to encourage residents to use those methods if they were free. That would limit the person-to-person contact. In many cases, we've closed down our rent drop boxes just because of theft or security issues. But in many properties, we've decided to reopen those to limit the person-to-person contact. And we've also talked about reinstalling or installing boxes if they weren't available. We've kind of thought about it every single way. We've also rolled out WIPs on certain portfolios for those properties that rely heavily on money orders. And in many cases, we're making appointments for residents to come in and pay, with social distancing in order to collect the rent. So obviously, rent collection is now here, and my heart goes out to all of our employees that are out there on the front line that are collecting the rents and showing up and being there for the properties and the residents. It's definitely a unique experience, and I just hope that we're able to collect those rents in order to continue keeping these buildings open.
Several of you talked about online payments. Whitney, from a legal perspective, can a property manager require online-only payments?
Yeah, so that's a great point. And I think everything our panelists have said so far has been right on point in terms of making online payment options available, doing things to reduce the fees for that. Just something to always keep in mind for our listeners, and I know everyone on this call, already knows this, that California does have a law that says you can't require residents to pay as their only options, either online or in cash. There has to be at least one other form of payment that they can pay their rent with. So absolutely, you can promote online payments, make those available, make them incentivized, but just keep in the back of your mind, if maybe you're new to online payments, you don't necessarily know what all the rules are around them, you can't mandate that as the only option for your residents to pay rent.
Thank you for that. Christine, I'm going to jump in with you and talk about resident hardships for a minute. We've heard that some cities are adopting ordinances about how tenants can pay late or not be evicted for non-payment of rent if there's a COVID-19 related reason. What are some policies that Mill Creek has taken on to address resident hardships in these times?
Well, we have several different options available for the residents. We had a program called the Curveball Program, which a resident can terminate their lease for certain hardships without penalty. And we have expanded on that to include COVID-19. It does have some items that would need to be presented that show that there is a hardship that was created by COVID-19, but that is one of the options of our current residents. We have a rent deferral program that allows folks to defer up to 50% of their April and May rent and then repay it throughout the balance of their lease. And then there's also a lease extension option, which to me is kind of like refinancing your house. So you can defer some of the rent and then you can have a lease extension to draw it out a little bit longer so you're not paying it back in such a short amount of time. And you actually we'll do it at your same rate. So we'll lock rates in for that extended term, and then you pay back your deferred payment during that time. So it seems like, and we will track it every day. We have a central person that is our point person that's getting all the calls and reaches out, gets all the important information they need from the residents. So we're tracking what everybody's asking for, what they're doing, and what hardship that they've encountered. So we have a better understanding. And it'll be very interesting the first 5 days of April to see what happens.
Yeah, how about you, Vanessa? How are you dealing with hardships and requests for deferrals or forbearance?
Gosh, it's such a hard topic. This is something that we've talked about a lot within FPI. We have a task force assigned to this process. We have established a hardship tracker for each portfolio of properties, including for certain ownerships. And then we've also included an inability to pay form that each resident is going to be asked to fill out in order for us to process and to confirm whether or not they qualify for a hardship and what that would look like. Obviously, this topic is evolving day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour, because the legislation is changing, local and state legislation. So it's really hard to figure out, each city and county is doing something different. And so we're just trying to really monitor it on a portfolio basis, what the requirement is. Can we ask if they have a hardship, or can we ask for proof if there's hardship? These you can't. So we're definitely looking at this on an executive level and pairing up with our portfolio managers and our community directors to make sure that they have the tools and resources to make the right decisions as it relates to resident hardships.
Yeah. And Adam, over at Manco Abbott, how are your company handling hardships, and what are you seeing coming in from your residents?
So we tailored an email blast based off of the CAA letter that informed residents that there are a lot of questions out there. So rent is still due, and if you have a hardship from the coronavirus, please let us know in writing. If we don't hear from you, we assume you'll pay your rent on the 1st. And then after that, now it just being the 1st, as people start coming in, we've been documenting it. A number of the residents so far, and it's still early, know they need to pay rent. They just want a little bit extra time, and we're working with them all on a case-to-case basis. The one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of the cities have different requirements on when they need to pay April and or May rent back. So in Fresno, it's 180 days, I believe. So it's 6 months that they could actually take to pay the April and rent back. Some other cities are 90 days. So we've just taken it with ourselves to generally go with what each city is saying as the more stringent or resident friendly term.
Understood. And you bring up a good point, Adam, is the CAA website. We do have sample letters that it sounds like you've used that we've made available to our members. We also have a list of all the different ordinances that the different cities have adopted to help owners figure out, which city requires what and what the payback period is. So the website's being updated, I think, by the minute. We used to say by the day, but now it's happening in real time. So no, thank you for that. And I think that I would encourage those listening to visit the website at caanet.org, because there's a host of resources that they can find to help them through these times.
Yeah, and I think with that, I mean, this is certainly a challenging topic. And like Joshua said, there's great information on the CAA website. We actually are actively working on getting sort of 1 or 1.5 page summaries of these local ordinances up. So if you haven't visited our coronavirus page, caanet.org/coronavirus, that's a great resource. And we'll have a link to that at the end of the presentation. So let's maybe move on and talk about what I would say is sort of the second most popular topic that we at CAA have been hearing from folks about after the rent collection issues, which is sort of this issue of how do we deal with maintenance requests during this time? Adam, maybe you could kick us off. I know a lot of companies have sort of hit the pause button on routine maintenance and things like that. Maybe you could talk about what Manco Abbott's doing in that regard.
Yeah, we take our work orders on case-by-case basis, and we've let all our residents know that we're going to handle them a little differently. An example could be if someone has a burnt out light bulb, we might deliver the light bulb to them, and maybe they can put it in themselves. Those type of things. Maybe the towel bar fell down. Maybe that can wait until this is over. Of course, if it's a plumbing or electrical issue that needs immediate attention, we need to take care of that one way or another. But just letting the residents know that things are changed, please bear with us, and constant communication as to what's going on is what's most important right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think you brought up the point of course, there are some things that can't wait, plumbing issues, electrical. Christine, could you talk a little bit about when you've had those types of more urgent calls and it's really necessary to send one of your maintenance techs into a unit? Have you changed your protocols at all in terms of how your maintenance staff is to approach that situation or how they're prepared?
Sure, absolutely. We have contracted with outside maintenance companies as well, so we have several across the country that will help us. So for some of the service requests, we will ask them to go in and assist us if necessary. That's what we've been doing for the big emergency ones. We haven't had anything, maintenance has not been called upon for any major emergency so far that I've known of that they've had to go in. So we really tried to take them out of harm's way and let the professionals kind of handle the emergency maintenance requests. However, all the service folks have proper PPE if they need to deal with, someone that we believe could be sick. They're protected, especially we have folks that are confirmed cases. We do want to help them and take out their trash and do things like that. So we have protocols around trash and how the service folks will need to get to it, what they need to wear, how they need to bag it, where they need to put it. So things of that nature. But for the big items, we will contract out with a third-party vendor that is, definitely prepared and more experience in dealing with these types of issues.
Got it. And, Vanessa, I know FPI has a pretty varied portfolio of properties. Have you seen anything maybe different from the items that Christine and Adam have talked about in terms of maintenance that you could speak to?
Not really. I mean, we're pretty much doing the same thing. We were an early adopter of stopping any unnecessary work orders or non-emergency work orders to begin with. We have recommended that our maintenance techs check in with residents via FaceTime if they're able to walk a resident through fixing something, or if they have to look at something in the unit, they're encouraged to do that through FaceTime, which kind of helps with the social distancing. We're following the CDC guidelines on personal protective equipment. We're turning vacant units as necessary to refill them, because housing is definitely an essential thing that we need to provide for our prospective residents. But no, we're just trying to handle it with care. One thing that others did not mention is that we are assembling a list of maintenance employees that are willing and able to work above and beyond their normal shifts should an emergency come up, or if there's an employee that's not willing to service a work order in a unit if it's an emergency. We've assembled a list of those that are willing to do that in order to get the overtime hours, or in order to help out sister properties. So that's something a little unique that we've assembled.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe something we've seen in the news a lot with respect to healthcare workers is the shortages in PPE, this personal protective equipment. Of course, the PPE used by maintenance staff is a little different than what doctors and nurses are using, but I think you've had some experiences with shortages on resupplying some of that PPE. What have you guys done at FPI to address that?
Yeah, so we made contact with our vendor to see what supplies were available and what were available to be fulfilled immediately. So we've been in constant communication with our HD supply reps and our maintenance warehouse reps to identify the equipment and supplies that are available right now. And they've also communicated to us that they are continuing to receive fulfillment orders. So if things are placed on back order, that we're encouraging our teams to continue to order those supplies, even if they are in back order status, because those orders will be fulfilled first. So it's first come, first serve in that process, so that, if it's not initially available, it will be available in the future. And then we are encouraging our properties to work together. Our sister properties are able to provide equipment or supplies should one property run out, until they're able to fulfill their supplies. So it's a lot of teamwork and a lot of planning to get our employees the tools they need to do their jobs and to sleep.
Great. And I think just one last thing on this topic. So Vanessa, you mentioned turning vacant units. Christine, I think Mill Creek may have adopted sort of a special policy for dealing with units that have turned over in terms of when you are going into those units. Could you touch on that really quickly?
Sure, absolutely. So we have put in place a waiting period. There is, hopefully it's not fake news, but there's some news out there that the virus can live on surfaces for a number of days, not just hours any longer. So we're letting the homes sit for 3 days prior to anyone going in and starting the turn process. So it will be a little bit of a delay, but we figure it's the right thing to do to hopefully there's no trace of the virus if anyone had it once we get in there.
Got it. All right. Well, I think with that, we can probably move into our next topic here.
Yeah, I mean, all of you have employees, and people who are working really hard day in and day out to provide housing and provide safety for the residents.
And Vanessa, you talked a little bit about what you're doing with your maintenance employees, but
Adam, maybe you could share a little bit about how you've either redeployed staff or some ways you've worked with your on-site staff in light of some of these new social distancing
requirements and some new policies you've put in place.
Yeah, well, the big thing was identifying our on-site employees, maintenance or office staff that were affected by their kids staying home, not being in school. So we've worked with them to, if they need to take time off, there's different government programs that we can sign them up for, and we can sign up for to get reimbursed for their salary, so we can send someone else out to that property so the property doesn't take a hit either with staff or financially. So I think that's a big thing to stay on top of. And like was spoken about for maintenance and office, have a list of people that want to work more if they want to take that on to help everyone else out.
Yeah.
Our entire corporate staff is all working at home in the meantime, so that was a challenge in itself, is increasing the server capacity and security and whatnot. That was a pretty big change as well.
Oh, I bet. Christine, Vanessa, maybe Christine, we'll start with you. I mean, Mill Creek has a lot of leasing offices that are now closed, but you still have staff on site. What are some things you're having your staff work on or staff do now that they can't do live tours or in-person lease contract signings? How are you making sure that they still service the property, and what are they up to these days?
We hope. We really have, main focuses to start. Our focus is right now, since April 1st, this puts over, so rent collection, working with our residents on rent collections or any, deferral issues or things like that may come up. So that's number one. Number two is certainly focusing on our renewals and making sure we're reaching out to people that are undecided to get that taken care of. Also on our notices, and then also on our leads. So those are kind of the main things the office folks are working on to start. And then we thought, how many things are out there that we just never have time to do, and we finally have time to do it. So we're going through each community, and we have audits that occur on an annual basis. So we can go through and we can review all of our audits to make sure we're doing everything we're supposed to and take care of anything that way. So there's a lot of different things we can do behind closed doors that we often don't have time to do. So we're, I'm not really excited that this has occurred, but it's nice to have this very brief opportunity to get caught up in, I'm sure once the doors open, it'll be back to business as usual hopefully in a month or so. So we really are keeping people busy with just, playing some catch up on the communities.
Yeah. Vanessa, how about any employment issues or policy changes you've made in light of
the current situation?
So many changes, but there's always work to be done, right? So although our offices are closed, we're keeping our on-site staff busy. Like Chris said, there's always projects to be done. So, we're asking them to, handle that kind of business. And then on our maintenance side, there's always something to be done on the exterior of the building. So we're encouraging them to, make sure they're addressing any health and safety issues on the properties. Right now we're trying to keep everybody in their jobs and employed and working, and we're jumping over barriers as they come. We do have a staffing plan available should the need arise, and we have a plan A and a plan B. So we're definitely thinking ahead, but it's really just trying to keep everybody working and focused on maintaining the buildings and collecting the rent and servicing our residents. For those that aren't willing to continue working, we are encouraging them to take their vacation time and time and just, do what's best for them as employees.
Joshua, just real quick as well, if you can think about, I know you guys at CAA, all the stuff you're putting together, all the new, the Q&A, all the things that are occurring. One of the things for the on-site teams, everybody's in the background kind of creating, and they're the ones that have to implement. So I found that we have spent an inordinate amount of time on conference calls, on training calls, on webinars, just to get everyone up to speed on all the different things, all the different local ordinances, all the different state ordinances, all the different company, ordinances and policies that are going out. So really a lot of staff training has occurred, kind of trial by fire in the last 2 weeks, but that's taken up a big part of folks' time too, is really learning what they have to learn very quickly so they can implement these policies and help the residents.
Yeah, and Christine, that's a really great point. I know on CAA's end, I'll go ahead and make a shameless plug here. Because we do know that so many folks do have staff that a lot of their day-to-day has really changed. We've actually made all of our educational offerings, these COVID-19 ones in particular, we've made free to everyone, to the public,
Great.
members and non-members alike. But actually for everyone as well, we have a coupon out there for 50% off any of our online education offerings that are of general interest. So our property management series, our monthly topical webinars, all of those that are available on our website. So I think that's a great point you raised, and that's certainly something that we've seen on the association side as well, of course.
A great time to get trained.
Absolutely. Well,
to get up to training.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think with that actually leads in kind of well, talking about training and communication, to our last big topic to discuss today, which is communicating with residents during this time. And of course, all of you have hit on a number of different ways that you've gone out with communications to your residents, whether it's about online rent payment options or changes in office hours, things like that. Vanessa, could you maybe talk to us about the tools for communication that you have found to be helpful during this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So in order to communicate with our employees, I know this says residents, but employees first, we've been pushing out a lot of information through what we're calling our recommendations, resource and recommendations guide. It's a Google Doc that we've inserted a ton of information and collateral that can be shared with residents and with the teams. It's just a really great access point for our employees to log in and get some information so that they're able to push it out. And then from there, some of our team has created online Google portals to give to their residents with a ton of links to local museums and aquariums and things to do while you're at home, and decluttering tips and whatnot that can be shared with the residents through Google or through email or through social media. All great information with great ideas, and it's a great way to build that community with the residents from afar as well. So a good amount of time our teams are spending on just communicating that information out to the residents. It's kind of like information overload right now, and at this point we feel like that's still okay, just because there's a lot of uncertainty, and more information and more communication is good than not.
Yeah. And then Adam, how about at Manco Abbott? How have you reached out to your residents, done things on resident connection, resident engagement, and potentially if someone says that they have COVID-19, how are you addressing that?
Well, things change every day, and we haven't had the last situation so far. Hopefully those are at a minimum, but communicating with our residents have all been through either email or texting or social media, all those things, and generally the same message across all those. Some communities have their own app, just those different notifications letting them know of all the different changes, because we've all learned that changes happen every single day and whatever happens today is probably going to be different tomorrow. Hopefully it starts getting better.
I think it's important to note that this, like everything that we're doing, is not a one-size-fits-all plan. I think that every community is going to have different needs and different requirements and, you know, different employees. So this is not a one-size-fits-all plan. And, you know, we've got to have the ability to adapt through this program. And I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway from COVID-19 is that we've got to adapt. We're constantly changing and constantly evolving.
No, we are. Things are changing pretty quick. Christine, I understand some of your communities, the staff or the managers have done some interesting things over social media to engage the residents, different activities. Do you want to share with our listeners a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, they've done some great stuff. I mean, everybody is very creative, and I've seen one of our communities in Seattle did trivia night, and somehow they were able to have it where it was live and all the residents could join in from their homes, and they had a trivia contest. They awarded prizes and things like that. They said the participation was fantastic. People really had fun and enjoyed it. One of the communities in Miami did, everybody wore their favorite sports jersey day and then took pictures and posted them on social media. That was fun. We've had, your pictures of your pets. We've had lots of pet pictures up on social media. We've had your favorite fashion on social media. What else? Gosh, we've had cooking classes on social media. So they're really, this is really the great part about this is it really breeds a lot of creativity, and people really shine with it. And some of the things that they're doing has just been great. So I suspect that some of the stuff will actually continue after this is over. And so it's been a lot of fun.
And then I know some of you have retailers in some of your multifamily properties. How are you working with the retailers to make sure that they can stay in front of your residents?
I know we have, talked with our retailers, and, we want to help them we want them to stay in business, and we want to help them. And at a community, you have built in, 300 residents. So we've worked with them to make sure that we pass around, do e-blasts with their flyers, and they give discounts to our residents. And, it's a strange world now that you can pick up cocktails in a jar and take them home and drink them. It's amazing what changes in the world when it has to. So, we really promote that. We're trying to promote, go get your wine and your dinner and have dinner with your family, and you can, just go downstairs to pick it up and get a 10% discount. So it's in our best interest to keep our retailers in business, and it also is a great amenity for our residents to have good retail.
Absolutely.
And I know we're kind of getting short on time here, but I know a couple of you, and maybe Vanessa, we'll start with you and then the others can chime in. You've been doing some really interesting things too in light of sort of the mass unemployment and underemployment we've seen since this crisis has kicked off, in terms of connecting your residents with job resources out there. Maybe you can talk about what FPI has done in that regard.
Yeah, so we were really excited to partner with Career Strategies, one of our providers for temp employees, who we are recommending any residents that have lost jobs to be employed with our temp agency and potentially get a job with them. So we're happy to partner, and we're excited to share that through our social media channels. Although our residents may be out of a job, hopefully we'll be able to employ them. And that was something else that we are sharing our hot jobs list with everyone. And if there is positions available at any properties, we are sharing that with our folks that are struggling right now.
Yeah, it's interesting time. Chris, I think Mill Creek has been doing something similar sort of through your company Instagram, if I have that right.
Yep. So, as everybody said, a lot of the hourly workers, whether it's the service industry folks, are definitely feeling the pinch of this. And there are a lot of jobs out there. They might not be everybody's long-term job, but there's certainly some good jobs out there for short-term. So we've done some really great social media posts. Our marketing department has gone out and made some, Instagram templates for us, and we've put them up. And it's Amazon, it's Whole Foods, it's DoorDash, it's Target, Walmart, all of those places, all the groceries are hiring. So we've put them up. We've put links to their websites so people can just click on the link and then go online and fill out an application. And as I said, even if it's temporary, at least people can have some work and be bringing in some income to help them out during this, this difficult time.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for everyone listening, CAA has made available resources, not job resources specifically, but community resources, whether it's nonprofits or state and local government programs that can help with wage replacement during this time. So we have lists of those resources that are available on our website. And we also have little one-pagers sort of listing information about the state unemployment program, paid family leave, things like that, as well as community programs to assist renters during this time that can be printed out and included with communications to your residents. So those are again available for free on the CAA website. I think that pretty much brings us to a close unless there was anything else anyone wanted to chime in on. All right, hearing none, I guess we'll go ahead and close this out. Just one last pitch for the information CAA's made available, again, for free to everyone at the webpage you see listed on the screen there, caanet.org/coronavirus. We've got sample letters to residents to address a number of different situations. We have FAQs, information about local ordinances that have been adopted, FAQs about actions that have been taken by the governor, information about the federal relief package that's been passed. There's a lot of great information there, constantly being updated. So if you haven't visited it, do that and do it frequently. So thank you and stay safe.